I know this is a stupid thing to start a podcast with. I should have Googled it before, but I could have sworn like Alaska had 3 different time zones. But anyway, who cares? Um, so it is super early there, and you said it is getting colder. Like what are you looking at temperature wise now?
This morning, right now, it's about 22 degrees here at my house.
Dang.
It's always a few degrees colder at my house than it is in the rest of Fairbanks because I live in a little depression on the outside of town.
Yeah. Does it kind of wear on you? Are you just thinking like, oh gosh, here we go? Or are there enough things to kind of do during the fall and then in the winter that it's like, oh, we're just going to put more clothes on, but we're still going to do a bunch of stuff and it's still going to be fun?
For now, I'm still in the kind of mindset that it doesn't really bother me. I think by like the April timeframe is whenever it starts to get really bad. March, April is like one of the most boring times. I think it just seems winter's dragging on forever. But, most of winter for me, it doesn't really bother me too much yet. I'm sure in the coming years that it will start to wear on me more and more.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of feeling it here that it's getting cooler. It's still rainy, but it's like a colder rain. It seems like it just hangs on longer and you don't have as much time in the morning and then in the afternoon. But like today's high is supposed to be like 48, which again for us soft southeasters, it's that's getting chilly. But there is a sense if the weather is bad that you think, oh man, here we go. But sometimes September is awesome. It's one of the best months because it's still sunny, not as warm, but you can still get outside. It's just less hustle and bustle, and you're kind of just your freezer is pretty full, and you just get to kind of enjoy it and just relax. And there's no pressure, I guess. Like August is just so frenetic. There's always stuff to do all the time, and then the rest of the summer is just fishing, 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 go, go, go. So September is just kind of that nice, calm decrescendo. Is that what September is for you guys up there, or is that what August is? Because you're getting your moose hunting season's going on right now. The caribou is kind of tapering off, right?
Yeah, for me, August kind of lulls you into a false sense of security where it's like, oh, there's still so much summer left, put off all of your projects and everything. And yeah, go ahead, go take some hunting time and go do your thing. And then you come back and all of a sudden it's the middle of September and you're like, oh my God, it's below freezing every night. I have so many more projects I have to do before snow falls. And it just then starts to spiral so quickly away to winter. And then before you know it, you get snow and time goes by so fast nowadays, it seems.
Yeah. Yeah. So, caribou hunt. Got you on to talk about that and recap that a little bit. It just seemed like an amazing opportunity. You got flown in and you were going to head up. Originally, it was going to go up and over this saddle to a different drainage and then to float out. But then you ended up, the plan was to just stay within one area and not go up and over a pass. Did everything kind of go to that sort of plan, or did you have to call any sort of audible, or what happened there?
So, yeah, I mean, me and Steve, we kind of went back and forth about what we should do and where we should go. And then we ran into a guy who was hunting out in that general area. And he gave us a pretty sweet tip about where he saw a bunch of sheep and where he shot a sheep just the week prior. And so we were, I pulled out a map and he pointed on the finger. He said, right there. And since it was sheep, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, who the heck has given me this kind of an information down low right now, right before I fly out in the field. And we just decided that we're going to pursue that since it's really close to where we were starting. And so we spent the first couple of days doing that, which, he did give us good information because we almost shot a sheep on the second day of our hunt. And then after that, we kind of turned gears more so into trying to locate more caribou and everything, and spent the remainder of the trip hunting caribou after that. But it was pretty amazing that, some guy we had never met before was telling us about sheep, and he pointed on a map where it was, and we go there and lo and behold, there's sheep there.
Wow.
and one is really close to legal.
Was he like a Fairbanks local person? Was he some random guy who's never going to do the hunt again, so he doesn't care about blowing it up, or what happened?
Interestingly enough, he is a guy who lives in Talkeetna year round, um, and he's a guide
Oh, okay.
who has been hunting in there for 17 years.
Oh, geez.
For whatever reason, he gave us info on where he even takes his clients.
Huh.
And so it's quite bizarre.
Yeah, that's that's a lot of those things doesn't always happen. People seem to be super super tight-lipped about sheep, mountain goat, things like that. I think especially sheep up there, it seems like it's a little more tight-lipped than a mountain goat down here, but mountain goat down here is pretty tight-lipped too, but that's awesome. So well, actually, but even before that, you guys had to delay your takeoff, right? Because the weather was bad?
Yeah, that's it exactly. We drove down like on a Friday night, and we had planned to fly out like 7 or 8 p.m. in the evening. And then we were sidelined. The pilot came in. He's like, I got good news. You guys will not be sleeping in 2 feet of snow because the runway is covered in snow. And we're like, oh, okay. We kind of got psyched out, but yeah, we just had to fly out the next morning, and just because there was too much snow out there, and that's the pilot was getting reports from a camp that was on the airstrip there. So we had to wait an extra day, and we flew out kind of later in the morning. Whenever we landed out there, we actually ran into the same dude who gave us the sheep information out there. He came and landed his plane in there about 5 minutes after we landed. He kind of like pointed us in a direction. He's like, it's over there, go have fun. And so that's what we did. We started just walking away from the airstrip, and then we got into the creek bed and kind of slowly started to see how big this country was that we were going into. We decided that we needed to, after walking a few miles down creek, start to just gain elevation to get up higher to see what we could see. And as soon as we got off the creek bed, which pretty much had no snow in it, the hillside that we started to go up on had 1 or 2 inches, and then slowly it started to accumulate up to where we were trudging through 6 to 8 inches of snow on the very first night. And we were just thinking like, oh man, this is a pretty wacky way to start our trip, but we're here, we just got to deal with it. And silver lining is that if we do shoot something, it's probably going to be pretty good meat weather for taking care of it.
Yeah, thinking back to the previous one when you're talking about the caribou being up high there, I've seen a couple things since that where just that high land caribou thing has got to be pretty sweet thing to go after. But how was that those first couple days getting after that, and how did it all start to come together? Because you have the kind of the first hunt where you're getting the first of the hunt is getting everything kind of figured out, and then things start to kind of fall into place. What was that like?
So for me, one of the, like on the first days of any kind of like backpacking hunt is, how's my pace? How am I feeling? Like, am I getting overly tired really fast? And, there's always that little bit of doubt where like, oh my God, I'm going to get blown out of the water in the first day. I'm going to be tired and it's going to be awful. But, we just picked our pace, took our time, especially walking through 6 to 8 inches of snow for a few hours. The very first day was pretty tough, but we got to a spot, glassed up a couple caribou right away. One of them, I think, was probably the biggest caribou the whole trip that we saw on the very first day, which was pretty neat. We ended up going to where he was a couple days later after we were messing around with sheep, but couldn't find him again. But yeah, so just dealing with that and trying to find sheep and everything. It was, it was kind of a little more difficult to kind of really get in there and just feel what the hunt was going to be like, to try and set a tone for the rest of the hunt. See if we were going to be going crazy up and over mountains every day, or, kind of really feel me and Steve out as partners for this style of hunt, because this is like the first real long mountain hunt that we had done together.
Mm-hmm. And what role did the snow play in that? Have you been in hunts that had that much snow before? Outside of like your winter horse hunts, of course, when you're kind of thinking about that and you're expecting that. But had you been on an August hunt, which you were encountering that?
No, this was kind of like my first real jump into late season backpacking.
Yeah, that's got to be that's got to be that's got to be something. Did it melt quickly? Was it gone or did it stick with? Because a couple of pictures that you sent that like it looked like a three different season hunt, like it was different times a year.
Yeah, 3 day, the third day is whenever all the snow really finally melted off. But for the first day, it was, still real heavy. Second day, still pretty heavy. And then the third day, by the time that we were out of our very first drainage from messing around with sheep, at the end of the day, everything was kind of melted off. And then it never came back after that.
What do you guys do to prepare for that as far as like gear goes? Because that snow is going to make things more wet where you camp. It's going to just kind of hold on and keep stuff from getting dry. Like, how do you? Is it any different actually than hunting in the rain?
I mean, I kind of pack the same thing for, early season or late season, where it's just for pants, it's, rain pants and gaiters for over your boots. And that pretty much solidifies that, and we'll take care of that. And then I always bring, a puffy upper and a pair of puffy pants and stuff. And the only thing that I changed for this was I just brought base layers. Usually in August, I don't bring next to skin lower and upper base layers, but on this one I did, since it was a little bit later in the season.
Cool. So when did you start? How far did you go on this first couple of days, and when did you start getting after caribou?
So I think on the first day we only walked a couple miles. The second day we walked, I think maybe about another just couple miles, because we kind of stayed high instead of going back down to the creek, hiking up the creek and then going up the little drainage. When we got up high, we stayed up high, and it took us slower, so we didn't have to walk as far. We just were kind of able to keep that elevation and then wrap to the inside of these drainages, which sometimes worked, sometimes it didn't. Sometimes it was, pretty sketchy with the amount of shale that you had to slide down, or big rock slides that you had to go down and figure it out and everything. But yeah, so the first day we saw a couple caribou. We decided to make a play into this drainage the next morning, wrap around there the second morning, and then we get in there about 11 in the morning or something, and it's just completely snowed out in this whole bowl that we do the whole backup. But within, I think, about 5 minutes of glassing, we saw a few sheep, and they were like yellow. They like stick out against the snow like a sore thumb, really. And so we decided to make a move on them that day, because they were, kind of hanging out on this little perch. But if you were to walk down in the creek bed within this small drainage, you could, keep down low, and then there was enough topography in there to where it would keep you out of sight. And so we hiked up the creek, kept out of sight, and then when we got to within about 400 yards of where they were hiding out for the past day or so, we had popped up, getting ready to look at them, and they were just gone. I'm like, oh no, what do we do? We bust them or anything? So we spent a couple minutes looking around and trying to look on the hillsides and everything. We couldn't see them, but about 200 yards away, I see this single solitary bush just going left and right. There's no wind, so the other bushes aren't swaying, but this one bush is just kind of wiggling. So I'm like, oh man, look at that bush. It's moving. They must be eating it. And then for whatever reason, I don't think they smelled us or anything, but the three of them just started running. And they were only like 200 yards away from us. And they stopped at like 250. And so we get the spotting scope out, break out a gun and everything, and really look at him, because he's not full curl. He's pretty close. So we just start counting his rings, and we count 9 rings on him and everything. But like the spacing on them is quite strange, and some of them are stacked real tight together. Some of them aren't, and so that inconsistent spacing is kind of what led us to believe that the sheep has some false annuli or something, and it's not legal and not worth pulling the trigger on. And Steve, my partner, he was like, "I'm not going to shoot that sheep." He's like, "You can if you want." And so I'm have my rifle set up on him, and I'm dry firing on him and everything, and going over in my head, like, is this a good idea? Is it worth it? And, the ultimate answer was no. This may be legal. This may be, a sheep that could be legally shot, but not by me.
Yeah.
After years of fine print contracts and getting ripped off by big wireless providers, if we've learned anything, it's that there's always a catch. So when I first heard that Mint Mobile offers premium wireless starting at just $15 a month, I thought, what's the catch? But after talking to them and using their service, it all made sense. There isn't one. Mint Mobile's secret sauce is that they're the first company to sell wireless service online only. They cut out the cost of retail stores and pass those sweet savings directly to you. For anyone who hates their phone bill, Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for just $15 a month. I was hesitant about having to get a new phone and a new phone number, but with Mint, you can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and keep your same phone and your same phone number along with all of your existing contacts. Mint Mobile gives you the best rate whether you're buying for one or for a family, and at Mint, families start at 2 lines. All plans come with unlimited talk and text plus high-speed data delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Switch to Mint Mobile and get premium wireless service starting at just $15 a month. To get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month and to get the plans shipped to your door for free, go to mintmobile.com/waypoint. That is mintmobile.com/waypoint. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/waypoint.
How far down do they get pushed with the weather?
And that's what we were looking at. Is we were looking really low. They were pretty much the same elevation as us when we were in there. So they were towards the bottom, and in the evening, whenever we found them, they were feeding in the bottom of the creek.
Interesting. And then what about with the rest of the winter? Like, do they go down and then kind of out of these drainages, or do they just kind of get to the bottom of the drainages? Or, you're obviously not getting all the way to the shore like some of the deer might get here. You can see some mountain goats that get down to the shore down here because they just keep going, get away from the snow. But that's impossible up there.
Yeah, what I've seen by winter caribou hunting is I've seen them on windswept ridges, and then they go up there and then they chip down through the hard pack with their hooves to get to something to eat on the ground. And so I've seen them to where they're like in holes that are as deep where it goes, only their back is showing. Wow. Or they're flush with the hole that they're in, that they're digging down like 4 feet sometimes just to get to some feed.
It's hardcore. You have to be. That's no alternative. Yeah, that's what you got to do. Necessity. But, all right, so continue with the story. Where are you at?
So after passing on the sheep, we decide we want to see how close we can get, and they see us and bust us and just slowly walk up and out of our lives. They just keep a nice little saunter, and eventually they just disappear. So we go back to our camp, and it's everything's slowly melting, and so we decide that we're just going to stick in there the next day for another night, and then in the morning we'll wake up and go to where they were, hike to the very back of the drainage, and then try and get up real high, and then maybe look in this low saddle that connects these two drainages together and look over into the next drainage and see what we can see. And so the next morning we do that, and it's still just like a winter wonderland, really. It's still super, super snowy. And when we get into the saddle to look into the next drainage, the whole back side of that bowl in there just looked like a racetrack where there's like hundreds of intersecting tracks from animals cutting every which way all over the back of the bowl. And we sit there all day or for like most of the day, it feels like, and just sit there and glass and look and try and see what we can see. And really, we can't see any animals in there at all, but just, that they were there at one point in time. So we decide on the third day there that we're going to hike back out to the main creek, walk up the creek more, and then look in 2 more drainages to try and see if, we can see any caribou. And so we make it out to the creek on the end of the third night, camp there, wake up the next morning and just kind of gain a little bit more elevation and just sit for a couple hours glassing. And the only thing we see are more sheep, but they're lambs and ewes. And some of them are up high at like 5,000 feet. Some of them are all the way down in the creek bed, at like 3,000 feet. And so we just kind of hem and haw about what we're going to do if we're going to continue walking up the creek and everything. And we decide that this particular creek that we're messing with, we're just going to say, forget it. It's not worth our time anymore. So we're just going to hike back down and go check out another creek. Mm-hmm. And so we spend the rest of that day hiking down creek and then looking at this really big hill. And, my partner's like, I really can't just keep doing this big climb every day, camp, and then another really big climb every day, camp, and then another really big climb every day. He's like, I'm going to get burned out. I was like, I hear you too, but I think that if we just make it to the top of this big hill between these 2 creeks, we can sit there for 2 days and just glass. And, it takes a little bit of convincing and take a nice big break and eat a lot of food and drink a lot of water and drink some extra coffee and stuff. And we head up through, like, pretty much just brush busting through the woods, and we gain, I think, like 1,500 feet or something, 2,000 feet of elevation. And then we get to this real high point, and it just turns absolutely beautiful. All the snow's gone. We start finding caribou sheds. It's like a big open, expansive country. It looks super caribou-y. It just looks really awesome from where we are. And so we're happy with what we did, and get up there and just post out for that night. And I think we found 2 or 3 more caribou that evening. And then we spent the entire next day at that area. And I think in like a 2-hour window from sitting in one spot, we found another 12, at least 10 or 12 more caribou, which we got a lot of really cool video on a phone scope of like them raking their antlers and shedding the velvet, and them just like sprinting across the hillsides and stuff, and some bull caribou trying to court female caribou. And it was just a really good day just to be out there. That it was like beautiful out, super sunny, let everything dry out. And so, and a really strange thing that happened when we were out there, there was some F-35 fighter planes that were flying around our heads out there. Yeah, they were up pretty low, actually, only a few miles up, it seemed like, because you could still see them pretty good with your naked eye. And when we were sitting out there just kind of glassing around and looking, one of them broke the sound barrier, and there was like this insane sonic boom that just reverberated around the mountains. And that was the first time I've ever heard that. And it was, just a really crazy experience to have that happen out there. You think you're all alone, and yet here the U.S. military is flying these multi-million-dollar jets, breaking a sound barrier. And so maybe wonder how many times that happens to just these random animals out there that are like, oh, yep, there they go again.
Yeah, there's the big bird, the fast bird up there doing its thing.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But I think so. I think we're on day 4. So at the end of day 4, we decide that, we're looking at this south-facing slope that's like a couple miles long, and all these caribou that we see are in between 4,000 and 5,500 feet up on like this smaller section of the south-facing slopes, where even after tree line, but there's like a little bit of like a steep section, and then it kind of seems like it has like a little table that goes across this whole ridge. but there's a creek a couple miles down, or rather upstream, that cuts this mountain a little bit. And we decide we're going to go down to the main creek, hike up the creek, go up this like little creek that cuts the mountain, hike up and get up to this real high ridge and just kind of see what we can see up there. And so on the end of that night, we make it down to the creek bed, stash a couple extra things that we brought, just so we know we're going to have to come back down here anyway. So there's no reason carrying all this extra crap. And we just make our way and just start hiking. A couple miles, we get clipped out by landslides and stuff coming off of the mountain into the main creek to where they're forcing us to cross the creek. And so we had to do that once or twice. And then we went through like a real big bouldery section where some of the boulders were like as big as cars sometimes. And that was pretty tricky to navigate in some sections. And, just kind of like when I'm going through stuff like that, I'm just thinking about like, how am I going to do this with like 80 to 100 pounds on my back, or with like antlers or, something ridiculous, but it's just something kind of, I push out of my mind so I don't drive myself crazy.
Well, at some point you have to make sure that you're weighing the possibilities of things, right? I mean, if it had snowed and you got fresh snow over everything, how much worse would that have made that pack? I mean, did you think about what was going to happen if you did have a 100-pound pack and you were hiking down that stuff in the snow?
It was one of those things where it's like, I'll cross that bridge when it comes. For me, hiking up in the mountains and stuff, I just don't want to go just straight uphill. So if I'm losing a ton of elevation really fast, I tend to try and get a plan in mind about, if I have to come back this way, which direction am I going to go that's going to be the easiest? I just don't go, oh, look, there's something down there, and just bomb straight down without thinking about how it is I'm going to get it out of there or something like that. Because I have been in a few situations where I was supremely uncomfortable, and really didn't know how I was going to get back, or made a plan of attack without making that plan and pay the price for it. So it's just one of those things where, with time and experience, is just something I look for before I even really start bombing after stuff. But since you're in the creek bed, really, there's always the option of crossing the creek, getting to the other side and doing that. But that just takes time.
Yeah.
Stripping all your pants and everything off and doing the croc thing.
Yeah. When we were up there for that caribou hunt, you'd mentioned something about just not putting those negative thoughts, just, I don't know if you said out in the universe, if it sounded like that spiritual or whatever, but it's just a good point to not always think about the worst things that can happen. Like, hey, what if I twist my knee here? What if I twist my ankle? You're just going to ruin the experience, and, it's just not what you need to do. But you have to have some sense of reality. Did you see yesterday? I think it was yesterday. Sheep hunter had to be rescued in steep terrain on the Kinnick River Valley, or in the Kinnick River Valley.
I did, yeah.
That's crazy.
That's some wild stuff, and
that is some wild stuff.
That's the Chugach Range for you. They say that they're one of the most rugged, if not the most rugged, mountain range here in Alaska.
Yeah, it looks super, super angry. Those things are crazy. But your sheep, that's a good sheep tag, though. Anyway, I'm getting distracted. Go ahead. Back to you had stashed some stuff, and you're seeing stuff.
Yeah, and just to touch on that thing about putting bad thoughts in the universe or whatever. Like for me, whenever I hike, I just kind of look at my feet a lot, and I look every single step where I'm going to put my feet next. I just don't, keep my head on a swivel and I'm looking up and around all the time for animals. It's when I'm out doing those kinds of hunts, it's like I'm looking for where my foot is going every single time, so that I don't fall and twist my ankle, or land on something weird and my ankle rolls and I have either just regular backpack weight, or especially when I'm carrying weight, I'm super deliberate and my pace slows down and everything. So I do my best to not be stupid and get hurt unnecessarily.
Yeah, for sure.
But anyway, so me and Steve, we cross this creek, hike up another couple miles, and we're like, man, we really should have seen that creek by now for us to go up it. Like, yeah. So we pull out the GPS and we reference it on a map and everything. Like, well, shit, we walked right past it. Like, that's silly. And so we're like, well, there's like this little bushel of trees. If we just bust through here, climb up this little 50-foot ledge, we can get up to like a plateau and kind of see better where we need to go. And so we start doing that. And, it's one of those things where you grab your gun barrel on your pack and like you bring it down by your face just to kind of like push through the woods and everything. And then you start having to crawl on your hands and knees, grabbing all the little bushes and stuff to try and pull you up and through. And, we get to a part where we're only part way up and Steve's like, oh, dude, turn around. Look, there's a caribou right there. And so, shit, lo and behold, he's right. There's this really beautiful looking caribou just about 600 yards right behind us on the other side of the creek. And he's up on like this little tiny lip. And there's like another small little tiny creek that's running right in front of him between him and us. It's only like 600 yards away, but it's on the other side of the creek in the north, on the south side of the creek. So, and he's like in the shade and everything. And I ask for a spotting scope and he gives it to me and I'm looking at this animal and, he's just this gorgeous caribou bull where he has this awesome big white mane, like white streaks on the front of his arms and a big white streak down his belly. And so we're looking at him and, I'm like him and Han and thinking, and he's like, oh man, he's got good bezzes. He's got a cool shovel. He's got good tops. He's got kickers off the back and he's hard horned. Like, I want to shoot that thing. And so when we're making a plan of attack, he feeds kind of out of view. And so we just decided it's just time. It's go time. We get to the creek as fast as possible, swap into our Crocs as fast as possible, cross the creek. And then on the other side of the creek, we dump all of our stuff except for our rifle. And I was very smart and put a water bottle in my pocket, which was a very good idea. Because the stalk was a lot longer than we anticipated.
That was good to have water.
Yeah, absolutely. And so there was this awesome hill that separated the caribou and us that we could perfectly sneak behind, get into view, and really get close to these animals to try and find them. And so we get into this area and we're set up and we're just peeking over the hill and we're looking at right where that caribou was. And now there's another caribou there in like full velvet. And it's like, oh shit. Well, there's two. This is awesome. But mine's nowhere to be seen. I'm looking around and I'm asking Steve, I'm like, dude, there's another one. Do you want to shoot that guy? And he's like, I don't want to shoot another caribou. Or he's like, I don't want to shoot a caribou back here that I could go find somewhere close to the road. He's like, he's like, he's not giant. And he's like, I don't know if I want to shoot him.
Yeah, if you draw a tag like that, like it's not a once in a lifetime tag because Steve's done it twice in 5 years, but I don't know, you might as well hunt what you can get in that area that separates that area from other places.
For sure. Yeah. And that even the little pamphlet that you get when you draw the tag, it says, congratulations, this is considered one of the best trophy tags in Alaska for caribou. And I think it's like a 2% chance to draw or something. And so it's the odds of him drawing it in 5 years is pretty low. And then the odds of both of us drawing it in the same year, I'm not a math wizard, but it's low.
In the words of mathematicians, it's low.
Yeah. So he's hemming and hawing. I'm like, well, okay, man. I was like, that's your decision. You can shoot it if you want. It makes no difference to me. And I keep bugging him. And I'm like, so what's your plan? He's like, yeah, I think I'm going to shoot that animal. I'm like, good job. His transition from, I don't think I'm going to shoot it to I'm going to shoot it. It was probably like 60 seconds. Let's be fair. And so I tell him, I'm like, well, why don't you sit where I'm sitting? I got a really good rest and I'm going to keep walking around and in the trees here to try and find mine. And he's like, okay. And so we're going back and forth and stuff. And I think the caribou smells us or something. He can't see us, but he's starting to act a little alerted. And so he kind of is up in this really nice grassy area. And then he walks down into the creek. And I tell Steve, it's like, dude, your caribou's here. Like, shoot him. You know, he's like, well, I'd feel more comfortable if you shot yours first. And I'm like, dude, he's nowhere to be found right now. Just why don't you shoot yours? And maybe that gunshot will spook mine out of wherever he is and I can see him. And he said, okay. And so we separate a little bit. Steve walks about 60 yards away from me, and I get up really high to where I can like see his caribou walking in this creek bed up into the backside of this bowl. It's only like a couple hundred yards from where we are. So, I mean, it's not like I'm looking through binoculars or anything. And so he gets set up and I start recording his caribou walking up this creek. Excuse me. And I record him shooting his caribou twice. And, you know, he made 2 good shots on this caribou and it was just a tank. It was just still standing after a long time. And, you know, I'm looking around for my caribou after he shoots. And I see mine. And mine pops up in the creek bed where his was, only about 60 yards from his. And so I'm like, oh my God, there he is. So I just book it through the woods and just start running towards where Steve is. And I was like, dude, my caribou is just to the left. I was like, can I use the rest and everything? And so I get set up on mine and he finally turns broadside and I put 2 in him. And, you know, both our caribou are down on the ground and we kind of look at each other and we're like, what in the world did we just do? Like, this is awesome. And we start hugging and embracing and stuff. And, you know, we're just kind of not trying to get too ahead of ourselves and just make a plan for, you know, what's next. And we go back and get all our stuff and then go and, you know, do pictures and videos and all kinds of stuff that we can do and just really appreciate where we are and what we're looking at and everything. And yeah, I mean, it was just a fantastic night. You know, it was getting pretty dark in the evening already. And so we just had to cut them up by headlamp to where we just quartered them that night, got all the meat off into bags and then off the body, but not off the bone. And then, you know, the next morning we woke up and deboned it all and then started ferrying it back down to the main creek for the hike out.
So when you're talking about, I saw my caribou and he saw his, sometimes it can be difficult to like differentiate which is which, but you and Steve had caribou that looked like they were at least a couple weeks apart as far as losing their antlers, because yours was like a nice hard-horned caribou and his was just sloppy with velvet falling off. That's pretty cool looking.
Yeah, you know, I think that the older that caribou get, the faster they shed their velvet in the season.
Okay.
So, you know, this is just observation. I have no idea if this is true or not, but it seemed like mine was older than his. And so I think that's why mine was hard-horned and his was still in velvet, because his, Steve's caribou wasn't really even colored up. You know, he didn't really have like a giant white mane and everything. And he still seemed kind of fairly young. Really wasn't ready to transition into winter mode just yet.
Yeah, those are both awesome caribou for sure.
Yeah, thanks. It was, you know, I went into it thinking like I really want a double shovel caribou, and I couldn't believe it that really the only caribou that I was able to put a stalk on and shoot had it. Mm-hmm. And after I found that out, I was just over the moon. And so it was just a really cool experience and a really cool hunt.
So the ferrying out, how many trips did it take? And then, like, do you have a guess about weights?
Yeah, so each caribou took 2 trips just for the caribou, and then we had a 3rd trip that we had to do for the meat, or not for meat, for our pack and our camp. Once we got it all down to the creek the next morning, we just started to kind of ferry things back to where we had to cross the creek the day prior. and it just kind of beat us up because we were going over like a really nasty section of creek where there was big boulders, little landslides, and it was just all kinds of stupid. I brought a small alpaca pack raft to try and, instead of carrying it on our back all the way down to the creek, to try and float it out. And, that we gave that a try for 2 days in a row, and it really did not work.
I saw that on, I don't know if it was one of the meat eater ones where they put it all there and just kind of walked it like a dog down the creek. But you have to be it has to be the right creek because it has to be going at a similar pace as you. Otherwise, it's just going to be a total disaster. You did take a cool picture and it looked like you had it figured out. But that's not the case.
Definitely not. The picture does look really cool. I will admit that. But the creek was, whenever we ran into this guy at the airstrip the day on our first day of hiking out, we told him our plan was to maybe hike some stuff out. And he's like, the creek's pretty bony. Good luck. And so I was like, yeah, okay, cool. Thanks. Whatever, man.
Whatever, guide.
Yeah, some guide. What do you know? And what do you know? He's fucking right, man. It like to try and navigate around these boulders, and the creek always seemed to like flow out right into like a shallow spot, and so the raft would always get hung up. And I brought like rope that we could tie on the front and tie on the back. So like Steve would be on the up river side, I'd be on the down river side, kind of pulling it side to side and trying to thread the needle about where it needed to go and stuff. And I put the meat in game bags, and then put them in contractor bags and tied up the contractor bags and put it in there, and then put the antlers on top and tied it down. But they just got like pinholes in them and started to get water into the contractor bags, and the meat just got soaked, and the antlers were flopping around all over the place, poking holes and shit. And, it was just a fucking disaster, really. We almost capsized the raft 2 or 3 times over the next couple of days. And we were just like, screw it. We'll just take the extra time and hike everything down, make 3 trips all the way down to the airstrip. And so we were still where we shot it. We were like 5 miles away from the airstrip as a crow flies. And so over the next couple of days, we are just ferrying meat kind of day and night, and ferrying our camp and getting camp set up, and then going and getting meat, and then going and getting antlers. And there was this one real nasty section of the creek that kind of like took way longer than it needed to. We were like, do we just cross the creek once and then have to cross it again? Or do we just kind of go through this brush? And, we first went through this brush that was like right on the edge of the creek. And we're like, well, it really looks like it's like 50 yards of brush busting. And so it's like, okay, well, that's fine. And so we start going through like these little tiny alders and stuff. And we're like, well, we got to come through here with antlers too. And so we literally spent, I think, like 2 or 3 hours breaking like a 6-foot wide path along the edge of this cut bank so that we can bring the antlers through it and not get hung up on everything. And that took so much energy, and it took so much time. And that 50 yards of brush really turned into like a couple 100 yards of brush. And, it was just a really difficult thing to navigate. And when we started to get down towards like the mouth of the creek where we camped out for the last night that we were there, it was just getting kind of cliffed out by big landslides, and where we really couldn't just walk along the creek anymore. And since it was downstream quite a ways, the creek was getting really deep. And so it's not something that we really were interested in crossing with Crocs and the weight. So we just had to push up and over hills still and everything. And it was just, I think one day we did 10 miles of ferrying meat back and forth. And, only 60% of the hiking that we did for pack out was with weight, but still, our pack weight for just our backpacks with our camp was around 50-ish pounds. I think our really heavy load of meat was probably around 75 to 85 pounds, and then maybe a little more. And then the trip with the rest of the meat and antlers was probably around 65 to 75 pounds.
There are two questions I got about that. One, at what point does the excitement of getting the animal down start to dissipate? Because at first you're kind of buoyed by the excitement, right? So it's a heavy pack, but I got, we're on our way out. This is great. At what point are you like, all right, I'm not as excited anymore. This actually kind of sucks. I'm happy, but I just want to get this done.
Yeah. I was listening to your podcast with that other Alaska resident yesterday, and you guys were talking about getting stupid jingles and songs stuck in your head.
Oh, yeah. It's actually Jaden. He's from Wyoming.
Oh, okay.
Wait, no, it wasn't yesterday.
Oh, it was Tuesday. My bad.
Tuesday.
Yeah. And so that, any kind of like dread that happens just gets replaced by super stupid songs in my head.
That's good.
And it didn't help that Steve he's kind of like an opera singer in the backcountry, I think. And so he was singing some pop songs, some Ariana Grande and shit. And it's like, why would you do that to me, Steve? Why would you get this in my head?
That's perfect.
And so there's some Taylor Swift that he was singing and got stuck in my head and stuff. So, but the fun aspect of it really dies for me like in the afternoon, like after dealing with it all morning long. And then like you're in the middle part of the day, and after you're done taking, your lunch break and stuff, you're like, I still have like 8-9 hours of this left. And that's when it really starts to like wane on me and just kind of like be annoying. It's nothing of like dread of like, oh man, crap, I have to do this. But, after like the second day, later in the evening, and you're tired and you've already hiked them like 15, you've already hiked the animals like a total and walking for like 15 miles just for the pack out. Yeah. That's when it starts to get really annoying. But, then we kind of like sat down and we talked about it and had like this revelation of like, it's cool in the sense of we have like a one track mindset. Like there's one task at hand, and that's get the caribous and our stuff to the airstrip.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing else to think about. There's no reason to fret about anything else. Like, oh, my bill's at home, or, whatever, I wonder what work's doing, or God, I got to catch up at work as soon as I get home and everything.
You're
it's
missing
like,
out
none
on
of that
Facebook arguments. You're missing out.
Yeah. It's, there's none of that out there. You just gotta, put it in your mind. Like we've been out here for like 7 days so far. We haven't seen another person. We've seen all this wildlife. We've had pretty good weather. Like there's no reason to be worried about anything else. Like we get to do this.
Yeah. And then what's your strategy as far as hauling stuff out? It looks like you had pretty balanced packs. Are you of the camp of, rather than destroy yourself with 120-pound pack and try to get it all in one, you might as well just do two, make it easier, make it safer? Or if you can't get it all in one or two, you might as well just balance it out so you don't wreck yourself? How do you gauge how much you're taking with each load?
So I think that distance really played a factor in it. I think that if it was only like 2 miles that we had to go total, that we probably just would have done 2 trips, one caribou, one trip, and then our pack and some extra meat and the next trip. But since we had to go so far and we had the ferry stuff anyway, it was just one of those things where it's like, make it into more manageable sizes, then you're less chance of getting hurt in like a super uneven terrain where you are just walking in a creek bed. So it's just rocky, and one rock could slip and whatever. All of a sudden, you get hurt and you still got a bunch of more miles to go and a lot of more stuff you're legally obligated to take out of the field. Mm-hmm. So it's just one of those things where just do more trips, not that big of a deal. We had the extra time. So, there wasn't really the sense of urgency where like, we're getting picked up tomorrow and we have to go now. But we still had quite a bit of time left on our hunt.
Cool. So what's next on the list now? You're back and you've had some Great caribou cuts for dinner, and you're attending your 42 chickens. What do you got looking forward to in this fall?
Well, actually, I have about 30 chickens. A bunch of them got killed by a fox.
Oh, so now do
It's
you have
actually kind of
a fox hanging in the back?
no, not yet. I am just closing my chicken coop at night, though.
Hmm.
No, I was getting a little bit lazy, and it always seems to happen. They always seem to come at night.
Yeah,
Those little sneaky snakes.
yeah.
As far as the fall, I just have some more winterization projects around the house to take care of. But as far as hunting goes, my hunting season is over. I drew a cool spear fishing permit, and so in the next couple weeks, I'm going to go spear fishing for whitefish.
Nice. That's gonna be sweet. Whole new experience.
Yeah,
Have you done that before?
yeah. They used to just give them away at the fish and game office here in Fairbanks, to where you just show up real early and there'd be like a line of like 200 people out the front door at like 7 a.m. at Fish and Game here in Fairbanks. But then, of course, under COVID, everything went to online, and now it's a fucking lottery tag.
Ooh.
And so instead of having the people who are, dedicated to wake up extra early before work and go wait in line, who are more than likely going to use that tag, now you have a bunch of people, everyone and their mother, putting in for the tag, since it's a household tag. And, now it's a draw, and now it's super difficult to draw.
Yeah, that's the balance, man. You want people to be able to experience great things. Like I've benefited from those sort of things, but at the same time, it's, well, rather than just you get to tell about this one time that you did this awesome thing, what about the people who could really use it as part of their livelihood or as part of their getting food? It's a tough balance. There's a lot of people, and there it is.
Yeah, but it should be fun. The way that you spearfish for them is you put on like some chest waders, and then you go at nighttime. You have these big flashlights, and you're downstream, and then you hike upstream in the water, and then you kind of walk behind the fish, and you stab them.
There you go.
So it's a cool experience.
Sounds easy.
It's kind of spooky in the dark. The only time I went out there, I was there by myself in like belly button deep water, and
That's
like I was just sitting in the water, and I turned the light off and just kind of like sit there for a couple seconds or like a minute or so, and like feel just being out there in the dark by yourself. No headlights, no light pollution, no nothing. So it's a pretty unique experience.
Yeah, it's kind of cool, kind of bizarre, or not bizarre, but just a different. Sometimes it's peaceful, sometimes it's unnerving when you're at that level of still darkness. But so, all right, man. Well, thanks for taking some of your morning to tell the caribou story, and always great to have you on.
Cool. Well, thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, talk to you later. Take care of those chickens, man.
I'll try.
All right, see you, man.
Later.
Bye.